All right. Can everybody hear me all right? Megan, can you hear me on that end?
I can hear you fine. Did you remember to hit record?
I did.
Okay.
So today is our first Creatio user group of 2020, so welcome. Thank you for joining us. As usual, we will always record these events and send them to you afterwards. We'll also send you the link for the upcoming user group in March, and make sure that you have any additional information that is important for this call. So our hosts today, I am Deneen Madura. I'm the Director of Marketing here at Technology Advisors. And we have Megan Sheehan, our Trainer and Business Analyst, and Chris Heyman, our Software Engineer and Business Analyst. And so I will hand it off to Chris to start with our agenda.
So today we're going to be going through the Section Wizard, which is a very important and integral part of using Creatio. So in this, we're going to learn kind of just getting to know Section Wizard, kind of just the quick and dirty details. We'll look at section settings, modifying pages, including fields, field groups, details, and business rules, dynamic case management, business processes, and lookups. And then we'll talk about some of the new and upcoming releases, some of the most recent changes to the product, as well as upcoming events. And then we'll open up for Q&A. Feel free to send us questions throughout the presentation, though, so we can get on those right away. So the basics of Section Wizard. Section Wizard allows you to create new sections and modify existing sections. You can get to this from a couple different places, but the main one is you go into the Systems Designer and then Section Wizard. You modify existing sections by actually navigating to the section itself. So sections that already exist within Creatio, you'll actually navigate to the section, and then you'll click View in the top right corner and Section Wizard. Basic modifications include basic section settings, editing section pages, dynamic case management, and setting business processes to be run directly from a section. Before making any changes via Section Wizard, you want to make sure to update your system settings. There's a setting in there called Custom Package, and you want to make sure you have that set to whichever package you want to save the settings to. So if you are working in like a dev environment, for instance, you'll want to create your own package, save all your settings to that so that you can move that package to your production environment.
Sorry, technical difficulties. Escape. Is this frozen? It seems to be frozen. There we go. Okay.
Okay, so to create a new section, you'll go, like I said, to System Designer and then Section Wizard. You'll designate a title and code for the new section. So the title is the user-friendly name, what you'll see on the front end in the UI. The code is the database-friendly name, and that will start with whatever your prefix is. Usually it's USR for user, and that's the name that the section is referred to in the database. Workplace, you'll choose a workplace to add the section to. You can also add the section to a workplace later on, and you can also add it to multiple workplaces. After setting these basic values, you'll be able to save the section and proceed with the rest of the settings, which includes modifying the section and adding pages and everything else that you're able to do. So section settings can be modified via the Section Wizard. some of these changes include the title, the menu icon. That's what will be displayed on the left-hand side in the workplaces. You can also enable indexing for full text search, so that allows any data that's in that section to be searchable. You can also use one or multiple section pages. You can also use mini pages. I can show you what those are later, but it's essentially if you want to just make edits very quickly from list views and that kind of thing. It gives you just a quick little page to make those edits and view important details without having to click into the full record. And you can also enable approval in sections. This setting will allow you to, it allows users to, when they create records, to set someone as an approver of the record. So we'll go ahead and create a new section now, so you can see what that looks like. Okay, so we'll go to System Designer. You'll see the little gear icon up here in the right-hand corner. And then we will go down to Section Wizard, just down here under System Setup.
Chris, we're still seeing the PowerPoint.
That is questionable.
Did you maybe only share the PowerPoint application and not just the screen?
Let's see.
You might want to just.
I see. Yeah. How about now?
There you go.
All right. So I'll just show you again. So the upper right-hand corner here is the little gear icon, and you'll see that System Designer. You'll click into that, and you'll get this page. If you scroll down to the bottom here under System Setup, you'll see Section Wizard. We'll click into there. So in here, we'll fill out the title, which is like we said, the user-friendly name. And then the code here is the database value. So you'll have to, generally you'll want to refrain from using a lot of special characters or spaces and that kind of thing. It makes it easier to keep track of in the database. And sometimes certain values actually aren't accepted in the database. So this is the workplace drop down here. We can select which workplace we want to actually add this section to. Like we said, you don't have to do this right away, but you can, and you can also edit this later and add it to additional workplaces or remove it. So this is the indexing for full text search checkbox. So if you want this to be searchable, this section to be searchable, you'll check that. And then we'll add some of this later, but you'll see these are the other sections. So section pages is where you'll actually go to set up the pages, and then the mini pages that we referred to. There's add record, edit record, and view record. And then also the approval checkbox down at the bottom there that we mentioned.
Thanks for hanging in there with us today. We're having some slow internet and some technical difficulties, so 2020 is starting off real normal.
right. So now, close out of this one. Now you can see that a new section is here along the left-hand side, inside sales. So we can click into there. And as we mentioned, if you want to edit a section, up in the top right, you'll see the view. You'll click that and go to Open Section Wizard. That's where we can edit an existing section. So we'll go into some of that now. Click that one. So modifying section pages. So Page Designer allows you to modify section pages. So we'll look at this next. But in the Page Designer, you can create new columns. There is a note here, not all columns are available in Page Designer. You may have to use the configuration tool for the full range of column types. Some of those include like other string fields that are just longer, and there's a few others. You can also add existing columns to a page layout. You can add new field groups and tabs to help with keeping things organized. You can add new details to the page. Another note here, the detail must be created first. You can add other page elements such as widgets. Those are definitely very helpful to see a lot of data at a glance. You'll see those are very similar to the ones on the dashboard. You can set up business rules for a page. You can also modify the page source code. That's also something you can do in the configuration tool. So adding new columns. So to add a new column, you just drag the icon for the type of column that you wish to add. You'll then enter values for title and name. Again, the title is the user-friendly name that you'll see displayed in the UI of the application. The name is the database-friendly value that'll be stored in the database. Again, that will be prefixed with whatever your current prefix is, generally USR. If you're creating a lookup column, you'll have to either link it to an existing lookup or create a new lookup, again, by adding the title and name for the lookup. And then there's a few other parameters that you can set. You can make the fields required. You can alter the caption that's displayed on the page. You can set the field to be read-only. You can also hide the caption entirely, which is actually the field name. So it's you can have a field that's just displayed without a field name entirely. And then there's a setting called Make Copy, and that's used when you actually copy a record. This will determine whether or not this field is copied over to the new record when you do that. So we'll go ahead and look at adding a field now. Okay, so we're gonna go, so this was after we, here, I'll show you again. This is after we went to View and Section Wizard. And then from here, we go to Edit Page. So as you can see, the column types are here, and then the existing columns are below that. So let's just create a string field. We'll drag it over to the layout here. And you'll see we get this pop-up here. So the title. So as we mentioned, there's a few other options down below, and these are the other options I had mentioned. So is required in DB is to make the field required. Read only is to make it read only. So multi-line text is another option that's only available for certain field types, such as string, and that actually allows you to type multiple lines of text instead of just a single line. And then, like I mentioned, the hide caption field will hide the field name, and then the make copy allows you to copy the values when you copy a record. We'll save that. So that's going to now appear there. So then we will actually back out of the section wizard, and then click Save here, and that will publish our changes. Then we'll go back to our page and we can refresh. So now let's go ahead and create a record. You'll see our field is now here. So other page layout modifications you can make. So you can move fields around on a page layout, including the width of the field. So as this says, you can drag fields from the left menu onto the page. You can also drag and drop fields that are already on the layout to reorder them. You can drag the edge of a field to make the width wider or narrower. You can also remove fields from a field group or tab and then add them elsewhere. You can also drag and drop field groups and details to reorder on the tab. So with creating new fields, you can also create new field groups and tabs to organize data on the layout. So you can create new field groups, which are, you'll see on the layout, they are collapsible sections. So it just helps to organize the data within a tab. And then tabs just let you kind of organize similar fields and details into a single tab. You can also remove field groups and tabs. And you can also add details to a page, as this mentions after creating the detail, that depending on what type of detail you're creating, it's a slightly more involved process, but we can take a look at that as well. So let's take a look. So we still have this open here, so we'll go back in and just show you a few of the things we just talked about. So with the existing columns here, we can go ahead and add these to the layout. And as you can see, if you can adjust the size of fields. And you can kind of place them wherever you'd like. Then down here, we can go ahead and create a new tab. Save that. And we're going to add a field group down here. And let's remove this field, and let's go ahead and add that field down here. And as we mentioned with the details, you can add details as well, but that's there's an additional process, additional step you have to go through to add the detail on the back end first. So we will go ahead and save this as it is. So we'll back out to the Section Wizard, and then save from here. As you can see, the product information tab is here, and that field that we moved down there is also there. You also see the other fields that we added up top. All right, so another thing that can be added to a page is widgets. So there's a number of different types of widgets, including chart, metric, gauge, and web page. Page widgets are set up in the same way as dashboard widgets, but are typically associated to section data so that they actually display data about a particular record, the record you're viewing. So we will take a look at those next. So I'll go ahead, let's take a look at the contacts section. So we'll go to the same place. So we'll go up to View, Open Section Wizard. So I'm going to go ahead and create another tab. Let's just call this one Widgets. Create a field group. And then up here at the top, you'll see it says Page Elements. Just click that little caret, and that'll display the available widgets. So we'll drag, go ahead and use the Gauge widget. So in here, this is where you'll actually set up the settings for what will be displayed in the widget. So let's go ahead and do all. And then here's where we want to make sure it's associated with the current contact. And then with widgets, we can actually expand these so they span multiple rows and columns. So we'll back out of the Section Wizard here and save this.
While we're waiting for it to save, I'll just add that if you wanted to filter it so that it was only calls for the last month or the last 6 months or however long, there was a section in there as well that Chris could have added filters to, change the scope of which calls were being included in this particular widget.
Thank you, Megan.
internet today, I tell you.
Yeah, that's definitely not typical load time.
Yeah.
You can do it.
All right. Well, I'm going to move on while we're waiting for that.
I think this is the point
so-
where you turned over to me, right, Chris?
Oh, yes, sorry. Go ahead.
All right. I need you guys to stop sharing your screen so I can share mine.
All right.
All right. One other thing that you can do in the page designer, the same view where Chris was showing you how to add fields and create tabs and add widgets, is there's another tab up at the top of the page that allows you to set up business rules. Business rules allow you to put in some logic around how things are displayed on the page, including things like making fields dependently required, making fields dependently displayed, so whether or not they show on the screen at all, making fields dependently read-only, sometimes you can edit them, sometimes you can't, as well as making lookup values depend on another lookup, so changing the options in one lookup list based off of what was selected in a different field. We did a user group all about business rules a couple months back, so I'm not going to go into any more detail than that because we've got a recording of that you can find on our website, and Deneen will probably include with the email after this one if you want to look back and see any more detail around that. One of the other things that you can do in Section Wizard is use the dynamic case management feature. So dynamic case management is a functionality in Creatio that allows you to put controls and steps into place for how a record flows from one stage to another in a process. You can think about this as being like journey mapping or process mapping. This is used out of the box in the leads, opportunities, and cases section, but can be used in any section where you've got a status and a process that you want to map out. You can see the image at the bottom of the screen here. This is an example from the opportunities section with the out-of-the-box dynamic case management that's set up in opportunities. You can have multiple cases with different things that you have to do along the way based off of a category field, a lookup field within the section. So you could have, for example, 2 different sales processes for 2 different types of sales. If you've got a sales type field, that would drive which process gets used. And the same stage field does get used for all cases, the field itself. You don't have to use every single stage in every single case. When you're setting up a case, that's one of the things you'll specify is which stages apply to that case. And then for each stage, there are a series of things that you can configure, including what can come next in the process, whether or not you automatically advance to the next stage when steps are completed, or whether the user clicks to the next stage when they're ready, what color each stage shows up in the workflow bar, whether, if it's an end stage, if that counts as successful or not successful, whether all users can go to that particular stage or only some users, and all of the steps within that stage. So there are a variety of different steps that you can include within a stage. You can have multiple steps or just one step or no steps at all. And those steps can be required or not required for each step. So that includes having tasks, but essentially prompting users to do something to continue to move the process forward. It includes approvals, sending emails, opening the page to edit certain information, changing the access rights, so maybe when you get to a certain stage, you no longer want certain things to be editable, as well as running any processes, which they consider sub-processes at this point, to automatically do certain things through the process library functionality. So we're going to go ahead and walk through how this works. And since I didn't want to mess with any existing cases, I'm going to use the knowledge base section for my example here. So I'm going to go into the knowledge base section and go to the section wizard. I did do a little bit of pre-work just to minimize some of the saving and loading time. So the knowledge base doesn't actually have a status field by default, so I added a status field and put some status values in my lookup. I also turned on approvals for the section, which is back here on this first section page. And I am going to send an email during part of this process or this case. So I did set up an email account to use for that, as well as an email template. But most of the work is going to be done here in the cases section, or cases page, I guess. And so I'm going to be building out what are the steps and the things that have to get done along the way of creating a new knowledge base article and getting it approved. Over here on the left, you've got your status field. So you're picking out of any lookup fields within the section which one has your status values in it. And then if you are going to have multiple cases, which field determines which case gets used. I'm not going to use that in this case. It's going to be the same process for all knowledge base articles, so I'll just go ahead and click New Case. Once I get in here, like I said, the first thing that we're going to do is set up which status values we're going to use as the stages in our process. So right now I've got just this generic new stage 1. I'm going to click on that and select the first status, so the draft status. There are a number of other settings here, but it's easier to do some of those after I've got my stages all added. So I'm going to go ahead and just go through and add each of my stages here first. So the other settings that we have within the stage itself are where can it go next, where could it come from, which do work hand in hand. As I add things or remove things from this list, it will automatically update, if it can't go to that one next, it can't have been its previous stage. And then I can also set whether or not that transition happens automatically to the next stage, and whether or not this is considered a successful stage. So if I cancel my knowledge base, that's not going to be successful, so I'll turn that off. And I'll go ahead and make that like a red color of some sort to say that that's not a successful stage. In terms of my process flow, I pretty much want to go from draft to either submitting or canceling. I want to go from submitting to, I guess, any of those three. It could go back to draft stage if it needs changes. It could go forward to being published, or it could get canceled. And from publishing, I definitely don't want to go back to submitting for approval. I may or may not want to allow to go back to draft to make changes, or forward to canceling to remove something. Once I've got my basics of my stages set up, then I'm going to set up the steps within each stage. So this is where I'm going to define, what do I want the user to see as steps, or what do I want to have the system do automatically as steps once the case gets to this particular stage. So in my draft stage, I'm going to create a user task, which is actually the default here. If I click on this drop-down, you'll see all of the different actions that we can perform. We'll leave that set to the task, and we'll go ahead and add a step to finish the article. Once I've created that, it will go ahead and move down, so I could create additional steps below that if I wanted to, and then I can click on the step that has been created in order to set all of the details up. I'm going to go ahead and, once this loads, here we go, make this, that would be due, let's see, come on now, there we go. 1 day later, last for, let's say, 60 minutes to finish your article. This is going to create just a regular activity within Creatio. So all of your normal kind of activity fields are going to be here. Let's show it in your calendar. Who performs it? The current user, but you could assign that to somebody else instead. Do I want to remind them? Where is this connected? So it's connected to the knowledge base article. When does this happen? Does it happen as soon as we go into the stage? Or if this was a second step or a third step, do we wait until the step before it's done before doing this step? is it required to move on to the next stage? In this case, I'm going to say yes, you have to finish the article before you can submit it for approval. And then if this is completed, we want to go ahead and set this to submit to approval, so I'm going to automatically change the stage. If they change the canceled, then we'll go ahead and publish this as canceled. So the list of options here are just my results in my activities section. So whatever your results list is within your activities configurations, those would be the results you would see in that list there. And then if I wanted other steps, again, I would add them below that in the same way. I'm going to add an approval step under the submitted for approval. This is going to use the standard approval routing functionality within Creatio, where it will pop up, I can spell here, there we go, and send this to whichever user for approval. And I'll specify, again, all of the details here after creating it. So approval is required. Who do I want to approve it? I'll send it just to myself because I want to be able to show you this, but normally it probably would send to the user's manager or to a specific group of people in a role. And then it could just go to anyone in that list. Since I said the user, I have to tell it which user to use, so I'm going to use the current user. And then whether or not you want the person who's approving it to be able to delegate that to somebody else. I do want to notify the person who created this knowledge base and submitted it when it's been approved or not approved. So I'm going to go ahead and send the approval result to the current user. And then here's where I had done some pre-work to set up my email template, so I can go ahead and just find that in my list of email templates here. And there it is. There we go. And here again, I can define what happens next based off of the result of the approval. So if they approved the article, we'll go ahead and move this to published. If they did not approve it, we're going to send it back to draft stage and let the user, make adjustments and resubmit as needed. And I'm going to show you just one more type of activity in here. I'm going to do a couple quick examples of this, which is to change the access rights. So once my article is approved, I want to do a couple of different things. The first one is if I'm using the customer portal, I want to publish this to the portal. So I want to give my portal users read-only access to see this article. So we'll go ahead and update the knowledge base article. Specifically, I have to tell it which one to update. I'm going to update the one that I'm using, that I am working with here. And we want to add a role, specifically the portal user role, and define which access rights they have. So we're going to add that role and give them read access, but not edit or delete access. And then I could also do something to take away access rights. So maybe, for example, I don't want anyone to be able to edit the article anymore. I could go ahead and say for the all employees role, I no longer want them to have edit or deletion rights. In which case, I probably should give somebody, like the administrators or some management role, those rights back. Otherwise, no one can edit them. Seems problematic. So then I would just do the same thing here. Do this quickly if I can. I want the same record that I want to update. In this case, I want to give, say, the admin role. All rights back. Once I'm done, I would go ahead and save this. And that's going to create this case. I can always go back into the cases and edit this if I want to make any changes to this down the line. Once this finishes saving, we'll go take a look at it in action. There we go. Back here. here and refresh. Create a new article. And once I save this, it will go ahead and start that case automatically. So now I'm in that first draft stage, and I've got my first activity here to go ahead and finish my article due tomorrow. I'll go ahead and just say I got to that early. I got that done today. Let's say I completed it. So I can go ahead and then it will move to submitted for approval stage. Because I set it as myself with the approver, I can then immediately approve or reject that. So we'll go ahead and say it looks great, let's approve it. And that's where it's then going to go ahead and move to publish status and make those access rights changes for me to control what happens with visibility and editing of this article. So really, there's tons of flexibility in the case manager to really be able to map out processes that you've got throughout the application. The last thing you can do with Section Wizard is enable users to run a process from within a section. So sometimes you have processes that you've built in the process library that you want users to be able to click a button to start, either just generally start, it's not necessarily tied to a particular record, but just run a process against this section, such as, say, finding duplicates, or for a specific record, run this process against that record. We're not going to cover how to actually create business processes in this particular user group because it's just too big of a topic. Actually, we're going to do that in our next user group. So that has to be done first. I've done that again already. But once you have the processes created, it's pretty quick and easy to add them to your section. So I've got a couple examples that I'll show you in the opportunities section. We'll go ahead and go into the Section Wizard here. And we're going to go into the Business Processes tab. Most of the time, in my experience so far at least, the processes are more likely going to be tied to a record. Most of the examples I've seen have been in that scenario, so we'll do that one first. I've got a process here called Schedule 90-Day Reminder that when I choose to run that against a particular opportunity, it will create activity 30 or 90 days out for that particular opportunity. Not a super exciting process, but just a quick and simple example. When you're doing this to run against a selected record, your process needs to have a parameter in it that passes in the record ID. And so that's what it's asking me for here, is which parameter do I want to pass the ID into. In this case, I only had one, so it was easy to default it in so it knew where to put that. While I'm in here, we'll go ahead and do the other example as well. So I've got just a general process to delete lost opportunities that are more than a year old. That one's going to run regardless of record. It's just going to scan through all of my opportunities, find anything that was both closed, lost, and older than a year, and delete them. When you have multiple processes in a section, you can change the order that they're listed in here. You can move them up and down on the list. So if you've got, 6 processes or however many processes in a section, you can control what order they're shown on the list of processes to run. So I'll go ahead and save that, come back here and refresh so I can show you what that looks like. Processes that run regardless of record are going to be up at the top of the page. What happened here? There it goes. Okay, just being slow. So I've got this new Run Process menu at the top of the page. This is going to be any of my processes that run regardless of records, and I could go ahead and just click that there to kick off that process. That one is designed to just run in the background, so I'm not going to see anything on my screen at that point. Actually, I think both of them are designed to run in the background, if I remember correctly. The record-specific processes you can run from the list view with this Run Process option, or you can go into the record itself and run the process from the top of the page, and that will run this process a second time. So if I refreshed my page, we'll get 2 90-day follow-ups instead of just the first one that I created. Like I said, that part of it's pretty simple. It's really just saying I want to be able to run this process from that section. Building the process obviously is a whole nother topic, but that's how you can easily make it possible for a user to manually trigger a process from within a particular section or a particular record. And I really don't, there we go, okay. So that's going to wrap up everything on Section Wizard. If you have any other questions about Section Wizard, please feel free to go ahead and post those in the chat. While you're doing that, we do always like to talk about new releases, just so that you know what's new and what's coming up. For anyone who was not at our last user group, the 7.15.1 release in November had some marketing updates, manually scheduling the time for restarting campaigns, as well as bug fixes for the dashboards and copying of campaigns. There was a new global search version released in 7.15.1, so changing how the global search function, the function at the top of your screen, works. This included the first version of a portal for partner relationship management. So you can now work with your partners through a portal with Creatio. Big improvements on the initial synchronization for the mobile application. It's now 4 times faster. Some admin changes, the ability to upload company logos in SVG format, and new options in the changelog UI where you can filter by period and also object. And then security and support, they added the options for remote support sessions so that you can more easily allow Creatio access to your system. And the 7.15.2 release is out this month. I think they haven't actually seen an official announcement of this one yet, but the release notes are posted, and usually the official announcement follows pretty quickly. In the 7.15.2 release, there are some marketing updates again. It's something they've been really putting a lot of focus into recently. So there's a new UI for selecting email templates, additional improvements for dashboards and analytics, and a variety of content designer improvements. So that's when you're building out your email templates, the ability to adapt to different email clients, ability to configure structure of the layout, a revamped content block library, the ability to save and delete content blocks from right there in the designer, and some new element types. In terms of core product, the column headers at the top of your section list will now stay at the top of your screen as you scroll down. That's kind of a nice one. Also improved performance for analytics and dashboards. Portal has some improved permissions options. Mobile has some improvements for iOS 13.1.2. The Exchange integration was updated in terms of how it actually pulls the information out of Exchange so that it can get the emails more quickly. As soon as they get received, they should be in Creatio. There were some improvements for working with macros when you're doing Microsoft Word printables, as well as improvements to the secure support functions that were released in the previous version. All right, so that pretty much wraps up unless there are any questions coming in. Our next user group is going to be on March 25th, and as I said, we're going to be talking about the basics of building processes in that user group. Deneen, anything else that you want to add?
Nope, just expect the registration link for that user group will come in your follow-up email to this event, and you can get that on your calendar right away, as well as having access to these PowerPoint slides and this recording. So just want to thank everybody for joining us today, and we'll see you in March.